my co-host is Austin Chadwick. And today we are joined by a full mob. So Dean Gracey, Dave Chaplin, and Jacques Blom are all here. And we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration, context sharing, onboarding, building team, social capital, all in a mobbing context. So it's going to be a really exciting episode. And so maybe starting with Dean, then going over to Dave and going to Jacques afterwards, maybe you can introduce yourselves, talk a little bit, and then once the introductions are done, maybe we can roll into how you got started mobbing, and then maybe we can run through our topics. So welcome to the show.
Great, thanks for having us. Yeah, my name's Dean. I joined Names and Faces where we all used to work about 1.5 years ago. I used to work with Dave at a company before that, and we both came over together. So been in the software engineering space for just over 3 years now. Got to know Dave and Jacques working together as the 3 engineers on the tech team at Names and Faces. And I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa.
Yeah, very similar story from me. I'm Dave. Worked with Dean for a 1.5 years before working with Dean for 1.5 years at Names and Faces, so about 3 years now. Yeah, all of us worked in person at a co-working space before going fully remote for the last year. So that's our story.
Jacques, how about you?
And I'm Jacques, and I have been programming pretty much since I can remember. I actually started freelancing in high school when I realized that programming can actually make money. Which was a pretty good realization to have, and then did freelancing for a bit, and then started working for Names and Faces, I think in 2018, and I've very recently resigned to pursue sort of teaching programming full time, so creating content on YouTube and blogging and creating courses and doing some freelancing on the side.
Fantastic. And so I just wanted to ask you all, so if I'm correct, you all mob together or have been on a regular basis. And how did you get into that? What was it like when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that one. I think mobbing was always part of our team culture, since we joined from the beginning. I remember when Dave and I first joined, we actually sat in a room with Jacques and another developer. And for our first 2 or 3 weeks, we had a really big project, and Jacques would sort of come in and help us when we got stuck, really onboard us onto the systems and teach us the tech stack. So from the beginning, it's really been part of our culture. But I think when we went fully remote, that's when it really became something we focused on and gave a lot of effort to. And sort of how we got started on this sort of long-running mobbing sessions is we had a big new piece of work that had a large exploratory aspect to it. And Jacques and I were actually co-located at the time. And it just seemed sort of natural that we would work together. And we just sort of sat together the whole day, 8 hours a day, working on this new integration that we were doing. And Dave was the other engineer on the tech team, and he was on leave at the time. And then when he came back, it sort of seemed natural that he would just hop on the call with us and sort of join in that exploratory work that we were doing. And it sort of we realized it's such a great way to work. It just never ended. We kept going for probably about a month or 2.
I remember chatting to our VP of engineering and sort of talking about how, he sort of mentioned how he'd like to see more or try more paired programming in the team. And it's some pairing is definitely something that we sort of started ramping up in the lead up to mobbing. And we've always sort of heard about or known about the concept of mobbing, but it seemed pretty extreme. So it's almost like we accidentally discovered mobbing. We actually started mobbing and we didn't really even know that we were mobbing. We're like, oh, this is great. Oh, right, well, this is actually mobbing. So accidental,
organic,
accidental experiment there that turned out pretty well.
Yeah. Dave, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the previous company that Dean and I came from. We used that sort of mobbing and pairing techniques quite often, and I think mobbing was something that we would use for onboarding, but often for like a project similar to what we sort of discovered it at Names and Faces, sort of trying to keep that context, all there, and trying to keep everyone on board at the same time. So yeah, it was always something, but it was never something at Names and Faces. It was always like sort of there at the back of our minds, like we should try it. And I think once we became a sort of 3-engineer team, that's when it really became more apparent, like we needed to try it,
Fantastic. Very, very cool. So I guess that kind of leads us right into the first topic, collaboration and context sharing. What did you notice when you first started doing this in regards to context sharing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we just discovered quite naturally was it was actually easier just to have us all on a Zoom room than it was to do work separately and then afterwards have to come together and share that context, and there's many ways to share context. You can share it through the code, documentation, or just having a verbal chat. And I think we just discovered that actually if we were all doing the work together, exploring together, writing code together, or just watching someone drive in a mobbing session, that was so much more efficient than having to sort of come together afterwards and try and map all these disparate pieces of information that we had and get it all together.
Yeah, I found like we weren't documenting as much anymore. The conversations, like having to schedule meetings around, let's try and get everyone on board and try and get everyone on the same page, that just fell away. And so we ended up realizing that we could move a lot faster and actually develop a lot faster. Which was a weird sort of thing because we had just lost 2 engineers. So we moved from 5 full-time guys who were coding down to 3, and yet we were double, if not like more than that, of our output. It was very odd, and we were only kind of using one machine really, or someone was typing at once. Yeah, very strange, but very cool, And so we kind of leaned into that approach, and I think it was quite interesting because it sort of had a knock-on effect to the rest of the company. That idea that we're leaning into a smaller team, and the rest of the company was like, okay, we need to start thinking about how do we improve our processes, or not, use as much processes. Like, can we do mobbing sessions? Even in the design space, I know that was a conversation, which was quite, and even in the sales space, which I thought was quite interesting. So it had a very positive effect for the rest of the business.
Yeah, I think mobbing is sort of like the benefits. It's sort of counterintuitive. Like you'd think, mobbing is going to lead to you're only going to get 33% of the output if you have all 3 developers on one call. But I think people underestimate the amount of time and effort it takes to actually context share and sort of coordinate asynchronously. And it was really surprising how much faster we were actually moving. And I think it was especially, we saw it especially because we were working on, initially when we started mobbing, we were working on a sort of very nebulous, like whole new domain, like we were exploring patterns that we never explored before, sort of different structures that we were adding on to the code base, and like completely new, like it was a complete, like the stuff that we were working on was a complete shift for the company. So it was really tough stuff that you couldn't just sit down and do sprint planning and figure out a bunch of tickets for it. You kind of had to take it, not even day by day, you had to take it hour by hour and just sort of see what's next. And I think trying to do that coordination plus to get all the benefits of knowledge sharing because every minute that you spend working, you're learning a bunch of stuff. To get all of that asynchronously would have been really difficult, and we definitely wouldn't have had the same output. Which, yeah, it's weird how counterintuitive it is.
Yeah, it reminds me of a what do you quote? You discover the work as in doing the work, we discover the work we really need to do, and I think that seems to apply there. And I had a follow-up question from what you were saying, but first I wanted to just mention I'm imagining mob sales now, and I just see this customer surrounded by salesmen, and like he has to give in, right? There's
And that's our strategy, you know, and it works every time. So that's definitely not a suggested approach.
Yeah. So are you three different, come from different specialties or different parts of the stack, or are you all kind of generalists to start with? And maybe we can go around and share a little bit with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, so at the moment, our stack is, React and TypeScript. And I think where Dave and I came from, it's very heavy on the MVC pattern. We come from a Ruby on Rails background. So, the extent of our front end was really like a little bit of CSS and maybe some JavaScript, maybe. And then coming into React, that was a, complete mind shift, completely different way of thinking about coding. And that's where that onboarding really helped us, we came in and React was this new beast to us, and Jacques had, years of experience, and we could just sit with him and he could, teach us while we actually do. So, we were given what even in hindsight was a very complicated task, and sort of thrown into the deep end, and we were left to struggle. But it was great because Dave and I could struggle with another developer who joined with us. And then Jacques would come in, every hour for 10 minutes and go, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Think about doing this. And I couldn't have imagined a better way to learn than having all of us together, learning together, struggling together. If we were each given separate tasks, it just wouldn't have worked.
Cool.
Yeah, I think maybe just to go on further with the sort of stack, we are, I would say, full stack. So we back end, a little bit of DevOps. We do have a DevOps engineer on our team as well. But the culture is there to try and get us involved as well and try and on that side, as well as right through to mobile. So we do React Native as well. So yeah, we're all full stack. We kind of have our things that we like, but I think we try and do everything.
That's fantastic. One thing you talked about a little bit was that the prioritization of the work was a little bit different. And so, based on when you were alone versus working in a mob, did you find that where you were doing like more Kanban when you were doing something else, like closer to some, a different process, or did it shift at all? Maybe Jacques, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like when we were mobbing, I don't think we ever opened up Jira, to be honest. We came in to work on Monday morning and we knew exactly what to do, and that was to hop onto the dev room, the Zoom room, and just figure out what's next. So I think I guess that this sort of shift in mental models is going from it's like just shortening the feedback loop, right? Instead of doing and the planning cycle, it's like shifting it from sort of a weekly thing, because you can do it if you have a lot of known variables, to maybe a daily or an hourly sort of planning cycle that you just naturally do when you're mobbing. So I guess like in a way you're kind of doing the same things, because obviously there is a lot of value in making sure that you correctly prioritize things, and sort of think things through to a degree, and talk things through before you actually work on them. But I think we took all of those concepts and just sort of squashed down the cycle time on that.
Nice, that's fantastic.
Maybe just to extend on that, and I don't want to go too down the sort of process route, but I think we definitely went through that exploratory phase as a mob team, and I think we moved into the next sort of phase, which got a bit more, maybe we had a goal for the week, and we kind of had tickets or Jira tasks, but they weren't necessarily the sort of more traditional user stories. They were more a task list, of things that needed to kind of get done as the team, or at least what we want to try and achieve as a team, this week, just to not forget. And yeah, and I guess that developed as the team grew as well.
And what you said, I think story can be a funny word, because how you described your task list is kind of how original extreme programming defined a story, right? It wasn't necessarily a formal format. It was just a reminder for a conversation and for the next thing to work on. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, what jumped out to me that y'all wanted to talk about as well was building social capital. Can you share about that? Maybe we'll start with Dean and go around. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I've really enjoyed about working at Names and Faces is we've always been a very close team. You know, we've always been that team who after work wants to go get drinks and spend time together. And, you know, we've gone on holidays together even, which can seem wild to people, but we've always had that culture of let's enjoy spending time together and do it outside of work. And I think when we went remote, we lost a lot of that, especially in the pandemic time where, you know, even if we could see each other, we couldn't because, you know, it wasn't the right thing to do. And I think when we weren't mobbing, we did feel very isolated from each other. And then as soon as we did start mobbing more intentionally, and even when it happened naturally, it did feel like a lot of that sort of spark came back, you know, that keenness to get back to work because you're going to be spending the day with people you enjoy spending time with, you enjoy having discussions with. And it was amazing to see that translate into our output as well. You know, when your spirits are up, you just produce better work and at a greater pace. So that was really great to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's that idea that you get those sort of slumps. I think the whole world experienced it, you know, but I think there was an element of sort of identifying it and kind of going, you know, I haven't actually chatted with Dean for for a day or two, or we've kind of talked and stand up, but, you know, it would be nice to just work with him for a bit, maybe pair, but then as you started getting into more regular pairing and more regular mobbing, it sort of got to a point where you're like, oh, actually, I need that, you know, I need that as a human, as well as a colleague, as well as an employee. So it's quite an interesting, yeah, I wouldn't trade it. Even now, and I know we haven't really got to that point yet in the discussion, but even now where we don't necessarily mob 24/7, you still think like, okay, maybe we need a session, or I really want to actually work with Dean for a bit. I think he's got an interesting take on this. I want to share something with him. I haven't chatted to him for a week, you know, whatever it is. But it's still that thing in our heads, you know, even if the sort of restrictions are a bit less now, and we can actually see each other in person, there's still the idea of trying to do it remotely, you know, and keeping that social capital up remotely.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like a big part of my, I guess, job satisfaction at Names and Faces was the team, right? And being able to interact with the team and hear their ideas and just like have a chat as well. And build relationships, you know. And I think that's probably, you know, obviously because I have left recently, I've been reflecting a little bit on what I'm taking with me. And I think the relationships that I've built, that's probably the biggest thing, right? So, and for me, I've always found it to be a very energizing thing. And I think it's the same for Dave and Dean, is that interaction. And I always think about social capital and sort of interaction between people on a tight team as being a battery that depletes over time, and like something like mobbing just recharges it, you know. And I think it's actually a great analogy because it literally does. There's literally a direct correlation between the charge of that battery and the amount of energy that you have to put into your work. So yeah, totally agree with you guys on that.
Incredibly ironic considering we're running out of battery now.
Yeah, two of our guests don't have power right now and are on battery power, so that's where that joke comes from. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe onboarding engineers in a mob. So is there anything that had changed for onboarding from what you'd done before to now?
So I can answer that. I think we did a nice, I'd say about 2 months of mobbing, and we did the initial sort of implementation of this big integration, changed the company direction, and we had good momentum. but we knew we wanted to scale the team and kind of at least hire 2 more engineers to kind of get us to a point where we thought, okay, this is going to get us going for another year. And we went through a round of interviews, and we eventually hired 2 engineers. And they both started the same day, and we were toying with the idea of like, do we do the traditional, give them a project, or like how do we onboard them? I've onboarded a number of engineers at the previous company, and in fact, I think Dean was one of them, and so we've done numerous like flavors of onboarding. Dean went through a grad program actually at our previous company, so loads of different ways. But the one thing that we were super keen on was actually just, we knew they had React experience. We just wanted them to dive in, because I've always found that that's how I learn the best, is just get a problem and start going. But there's the domain knowledge, there's all that stuff. So what we did was just continue the mob. It was just 2 extra people, and we just carried on working. Obviously sharing much more information and being a bit more verbose when you talked about certain domain elements. But yeah, I mean, often saying, okay, so we work with 2 other guys, Lawrence and Grant. So often saying, Lawrence, you do you want to drive this one? And cool. And then we just talk through the problem and go, okay, yeah, click over there, explore that directory. You'll find an example of that over here, and that kind of thing. And we found that, within the first day or 2, they were obviously committing stuff was going into production already. And yeah, it was one of those things where they were feeling more and more comfortable in the code base, and obviously learning not just the code base, but all sorts of other things. I'll probably let the other guys sort of talk to some of the other elements that we could kind of share and impart on them.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, I don't think many developers who start a job actually get something into production on their first day. And I think that what I've found quite valuable, I think that the primary, like Dave says, you do want to be more intentional about the purpose of mobbing when you're onboarding. Like I think the primary purpose is to try and share the company's context and code and ways of working with the new guys. But I think another big part of it is that social capital that we spoke about earlier. And there's obviously so much more of it to build now with new people joining the team. And it's definitely not just about like imparting our culture and our ways of thinking on, new additions to the team. It's not the same team that it used to be before they joined. It's a new team, but we just happen to be in it, right? So I think there's definitely a lot of explaining things like sort of clearly and deliberately to make sure that, you want to be aware of what context you have that they might not, which is not always easy. But then you also want to ask them a lot of questions. And I kind of, the way I think about it is you as an existing member of the team have as much context to pick up as they do, right? You have a lot to learn about them, about the unique ways that they think and that they work. And obviously that sort of, that input of diversity, I think makes the team a lot stronger and a lot, I think it leads to richer ways of working and thinking through problems. I don't think you want a team that sort of thinks in one way, or a team that sort of imparts a very specific way of thinking, way of working, way of solving problems on new joiners. So I think that was a very big part of mobbing.
Yeah, what really stood out to me was, the 3 of us sort of, as a small team does, get into very similar patterns and how we solve problems, because we're constantly reviewing each other's code, learning from each other. So we, form this tight little bubble. And it was quite cool to have 2 new guys come in. And, within the first week, I remember thinking, okay, this week is, the whole point is to onboard these guys. And the amount of knowledge I gained from them in that first week, very technical knowledge was also fantastic, because they're coming in with things that we've never seen before, making suggestions. And yeah, it was quite cool to see how that learning went both ways.
I think it's that mobbing has that counterintuitive result often, where even if you feel like you're going to be teaching someone completely new, in that process you learn so much, and it's always surprising, but it always turns out to be true. And one thing you said about groupthink or kind of happening in the mob is, and what you said is what I've experienced, is it's almost always the opposite, right? There's a lot of diversity of opinions, right? I mean, developers are famous for it, right? Tabs versus spaces and all the other different things, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, you just kind of form into this one mind that just agrees with each other. And I'm like, I've never been on a mob like that. there usually is quite a few things to work through, and you work through it well. But yeah, I think once people are comfortable and the psychological safety is high, then yeah, it's kind of continuous integration of ideas there. Chris, did you have any more questions on onboarding?
Yeah, so I think we talked a little bit about the social aspects earlier. And so I've had experiences kind of onboarding in a mob. And so I just wanted to kind of get what you all felt about maybe, bringing on a new team member. It's kind of like inviting somebody into a social circle almost. And so how did mobbing help or not help in the social aspects of onboarding a new team member?
I mean, I think it really did help. I think it sort of, I find that a really interesting question, because that's exactly how we didn't want people to feel like they're excluded or anything like that. And that's actually a conversation we had recently. We were talking about how that actually did happen and how it worked out pretty well. I think even when we mob and we are working together, there's a lot of jokes, and we chat, and I'd say a good portion of it is conversation, and it isn't just about work, but that I think does help. And so even if there is maybe an inside joke or something like that, those sort of things are then more like almost also explained and given like the domain, and you sort of, it's quite an interesting sort of thing where you're going, you see Jacques comes from the very north of South Africa, so that's where that joke comes from, and then they're like, oh, okay, that's great, and then you're trying to include them and make it like really explicit. It might seem a bit silly at first, but then it really does break down those barriers. And the psychological safety that you mentioned, I think that is super important, because I think you want those opinions or someone to come and say, oh, you're going down that route. I really don't think you should do that because of this and this and this. And I want to hear that. I want to be told that I'm wrong. And if someone's just joined a company, they might not feel like they can do that. So if we can get to the point where they can do it like on day one, that's super exciting. So maybe there's some jokes here and there, but ideally you want to get to the point where you can say anything, and I'm more than happy. And I guess that goes into like who you're hiring and what kind of people sort of really work for this type of thing. And I think mobbing can be really tough if you have sort of personalities that are maybe more stubborn and maybe like aren't open to sort of change. And obviously that comes with the whole agile discussion. So it's a really interesting space. I think we've learned that, who you hire also matters, like in a big way when you're talking about mobbing, not just
I think totally agree. I think mobbing is actually a good litmus test for if you're trying to hire a tight-knit, highly collaborative team of people, trying to imagine what a new potential team member or candidate would be like in a mobbing session, I think is a great way to evaluate what they would be like. The advice, I think one thing that I've really learned in the last while from doing a lot of interviews, helping grow the team, is like throw away the whiteboard. Our interview process, the first thing that we do is we figure out who the person is. We don't care, like we look at their resume and we're like, okay, they say that they can, write React, and we believe them for now. And then we first have a first round interview where we figure out who that person actually is and what they're like, because that's way more important to us than like the tech stack. Maybe they don't know React at all and they just know Ruby, but we know that they can, they would be a much better hire because we can bring them on. They're going to fit into the culture really well, and they're going to be very, very open to learning and collaborating, and they're not going to have a big ego, and they're going to be able to learn that technology, right? For example, but I guess like just trying to imagine what would that person be like to actually mob with, I think is a great test.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think we've experienced the same with hiring and interviews, and it's there's so much that you learn about the person and their personality and how they are, that is, there's basically nowhere to hide, so to speak, right? And it's just evident, and you can see how they respond to someone trying to coach them or someone disagreeing with them, or and that's really, I think, becomes more important than almost everything else. And I think you guys were all hinting at that. Cool. I had kind of maybe one more follow-up question to all of this. Is it sounds like somewhat recently you've all experienced mobbing in a new and different way, and some of you are staying in the same path, and Jacques is going a different path. What are you taking with you from this experience into the future in regards to work or whatever from experiencing this mobbing together?
Yeah, I think straight off the bat, I definitely have an extra question I would ask anyone interviewing me is, do your tech team mob? Like, is that something that you do? Because I think it's a great indicator of the culture, and to me, the culture is very important, probably more important than the product I'm working on or salary or anything of that is, am I going to enjoy my day to day? Am I going to enjoy the people I'm working with? And, I think, I think if a company has a mobbing culture, it says a lot about them. And I think it would be tough for me to go to a place that didn't mob,
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that we've moved to a sort of hybrid of knowing, sometimes you want to work on a piece by yourself, or maybe go down a bit of a refactor hole, or something like that, where you feel like you can do something by yourself. But often you find, like, if there's something with, we can almost identify a piece of work and kind of go, this will be great if we all get into a room. Or even if you're going down a specific path and you realize, wow, this would be really good if everyone else was on this path. I'm going to quickly ping everyone. It's a message in the our team dev channel in Slack. And often people are super keen. They're like, yep, let's get in the room. And that's something we have is actually a dedicated Zoom room where, people go to pair. That's your default. You go there to pair. And then other people can go join if they want to. So yeah, I think if I had to leave the company, that's definitely something that I would look for is sort of, is there that culture of like wanting to share and wanting to work together? And I think mobbing is a big part of that. It's definitely a way of problem solving as well. Collaborative. I think it's just it was a natural step if you're going down an agile sort of journey, starting with planning and doing the whole thing right through to, wow, this is actually just how you solve problems. You do it together.
Yeah, it's definitely something I miss, now being a freelancer and mostly working on sort of in isolation. You definitely miss it a lot. I think when we were busy mobbing pretty heavily, the one thing that, I think when you do mob, there are a few things to be aware of. And the one thing that we experienced was we sort of started work at 9 a.m. and hopped on a Zoom call, and we were on the Zoom call for, I don't know, 4 hours, and then took an hour off and then came back. And then it was another, I don't know, could even have been another 4 hours. So it's like 8 total hours of being on a Zoom call with one person driving. And it's kind of like pairing, but it's where you like, it's a lot of attention, right? You have to sort of constantly, it can be a very emotionally and intellectually draining thing, just because of the amount of sort of attention involved. I think it's a bit easier with mobbing than pairing, because it's a bit easier to just zone out because there are fewer people on the call. But I think it is definitely something to be aware of, is trying to, it's almost like mobbing burnout, you know, where you finish the day exhausted because it's almost like you've literally sat next to someone or sat in a boardroom all day with one person driving and everyone else having to be attentive and also solving problems. I guess in an office, it's much easier to just like walk out of the office for a bit and take a break and go for a walk. Or if you're working by yourself, just take your headphones off and go get some fresh air. So that's definitely something to be aware of. And I think there's definitely a lot of value in the deep work parts of things as well. Being able, like Dave said, being able to dive into like a good refactor, or just sort of getting completely lost and getting into that flow state, completely forgetting about all other humans on Earth and just solving really interesting problems. But with all of that said, I definitely, like, there's so much value in mobbing as well. And it's funny, like, you know, you think that the deep work is probably the thing that most leads to creativity, but I think the creativity that you get out of mobbing is very different, because it's like group creativity, you know, which is really cool. And I think the two different kinds of work definitely complement each other. But yeah, from my side, like I've really been enjoying the sort of deep work sessions, but I sometimes get really frustrated because sometimes you're just stuck on something, or sometimes you have like you're 50-50 on how to implement, like where to store a piece of data. And you're like, oh, I've got no idea. I'd really love to ask someone. And you know, when you're solo, it's not so easy. So I think it's definitely amazing for when you hit those brick walls and you just need like a couple of other people to help you walk through this super complex thing. Yeah.
And I think where we got to now is we have a much better understanding of that fatigue and how it can affect people. So, you know, now when we do open up mobbing, it's quite acceptable for someone to just hop off the call, you know, like if you're getting fatigued, if you're getting tired and you're not getting value out of the call and you feel you're not adding value, you know, go take a break, you know, go for a walk, go make a cup of tea, come back in 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, we'll catch you up. Like it's really not a big deal. And I think learning that lesson really helped, because as Jacques was saying, or Dave was saying, getting to the end of the day and being exhausted, like it's okay for a while, but it wasn't sustainable for us, you know. You know, I think we felt it after a couple of weeks. You know, you get to the weekend and you just pass out the whole weekend because of that emotional and, you know, intellectual drain. So yeah, I think getting that balance has been really beneficial to us.
Yeah, the mobs that Austin and I work with, I think all of them at this point have actually, they put a break in the timer. So the timer rotates through and then there's this set break and everybody leaves and then comes back. And I think that's been a positive impact on everybody and their productivity as well. So there are strategies for it. Being conscious of it is really important for sure.
Yeah, and I think the yes and to that is it's fascinating. The more people I talk to who mobbing, they all have their different strategies for, you know, handling it, right? And so, like you were saying, it really charges your battery, but it also can drain your battery in other ways, right? And so it's been interesting because I've been hopping around mobs more recently, and that break timer, I've even noticed some people go much longer without a break, and some people have a much tighter loop. Some people have a much longer time before they have a, you know, mini retrospective, and some it's much tighter. And what I find from that, and then some people like I've been on a mob with need some more solo time, and then they go solo time, and then they come and back and join the mob. And there's no right answer, right? You just got to find what works for your context. And I think the ability to keep experimenting and find what works in your environment is really cool. And yeah, it's just inspiring to hear other ways others have done it.
All right, guys, do you have anything that you'd like to plug or share before we sign off?
Yeah, so I guess I've recently left my full-time job to sort of pursue the world of developer education and content creation to sort of try and build the life that I want. So if you're interested in following along in the journey and maybe learning a thing or two, hopefully, you can check me out on Jacques_codes on Twitter. Yeah, I'll see you there.
All right. We'll put a link in the show notes. Dave and Dean, anything that you have in mind?
Yeah, I mean, if you are a company that uses ADP for your employee HR system, please check out Names and Faces, which is the company we work at. We build an amazing visual employee directory with an awesome org chart. It's an awesome way to get to know who's in your company, especially for larger organizations. So yeah, I'm sure we're going to have a link in the...
Yeah, absolutely.
Faces.
All right. Well, to our audience, if you have anything, if you know anybody that would be helped by the information that was in this video, maybe people are thinking about experimenting with mobbing and to kind of push them over that hump. Maybe you want to hear from people who have been doing it for a little while and hear a team talk about it. This would be a great video to share with them. And other than that, please like and subscribe. And thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. Cheers.